Welcome to Mysterious Universe, Season 32, Episode 19. Coming up on the show, we've got the Bigfoot Underground Network, the Time Expansion Experience, and the Crystal Mine Gateway. What are you giggling at?
I'm sorry, I just spilled my drink in my lap. So I'm like, this
every
is very
time.
professional.
Remember that old tap we had at the old office, and every time you turned it on, it would just go all over your crotch?
Yeah, every time. And there was like, we had a guest come in, and I just walk out, and it was like all over my pants. It's like, great.
And it wasn't just like it wasn't like a little wet spot either.
No, it was like I'd pissed myself.
Yeah.
It was just because this particular tap, if you just turn it just a little bit too much, it just come roaring out.
The angle of the sink was perfectly pointed to your crotch, and it was just perfect every time. Never happened to me.
I'm like, that's it. We're leaving this place. Going to get a new office space.
You have no subtlety with home appliances, I've noticed. There's a gradient of turning on the tap. You're either on or off.
Oh, yeah, I'm black and
You're
white.
like off, on.
Yep, that's the way it's got to be.
It's always been like that.
No subtlety. And in fact, that's what this show is going to be like. There's no subtlety in this episode. And actually, I'm really looking forward to this episode because we're going to be heading out to some very strange anomalies that started out with what appeared to be a near-death experience. So when I picked this up, it was mentioned by Brent Rains. It was in an article titled Strange Happenings at Arkansas's Broad Camp Crystal Mine. And I mentioned this at the end of the last show, saying, there's a couple of stories out there of these weird happenings. There's so much, Ben. It is truly surreal what is going on.
So what is this Crystal Mine? This is a real place?
This is a real
Crystal
place.
Mine?
Yeah, this is a real place. It's owned by Cheryl and Orville Murphy. And even as recently as last year, December of 2023, they had a very, very strange experience. And it was linked to this documentary, right? So the documentary is called Medical Doctor Has Near-Death Experience, Encounters UFOs and Bigfoot. I was like, okay, I'll check it out.
Great title, by the way.
Great title. And look, I realized, though, it's connected to a documentary we've looked at before. And I'm just looking at my notes here. It's the Bigfoot of Bailey, Colorado, and its portal.
Is that the guy that believed he could spot Sasquatch with his Xbox
360 camera?
Yeah,
that's
his
right.
Kinect camera.
That's right. And I mean, we were kind of made light of it and had a little bit of fun with it. But I think that these guys are on to something. Like, I will ask you on this episode to suspend your disbelief a little bit. But look, their hearts are in the right place. They seem to be very genuine about what they're experiencing. So we're going to look into the story of Melinda Greer, which ended up connecting in this really roundabout and strange way into these strange happenings and some weird dimensional portal that's at this Crystal Mine location.
I'm all for it.
Great.
Because I was all set to do the free show, and then Aaron, he sent over a folder of what he had coming up, and I just saw it was a folder called Bigfoot with 28 videos in it. So I thought, no, this is all yours, buddy.
No,
I've got some stuff coming up in Plus. I'm going to be looking at this brand new book from Steve Taylor. He's a psychologist that's been looking at time expansion experiences.
Oh, yes. Yep.
And it all started when he had an accident with his wife in the car, this car accident. And he describes what I think a lot of people, if they haven't experienced it themselves.
Like the slowing of time when something bad happens?
Yeah, you would know. I mean, it's a trope in the movies, right? Where everything just goes,
it happens.
When time slows down. This is a real thing. And because of this effect, many people that experience it, they have more time to make decisions. There's a calmness that comes about. There's a certain confidence in their ability. And for someone in a car accident, for example, they have ample time to make all these intricate maneuvers and decisions to avoid a fatal collision. And that's what happened to Steve. And it was so life-changing for him. He was really convinced that this time stretching experience saved his life. He decided to collect even more reports from all around the world of people that have had, life-threatening moments where it really is like the Matrix, where time just goes.
Well, this is kind of an extension of that old idea of, you remember kids like, when we were kids, summers just went on and on and on. And now it's like, and it's true, like here in Australia, you get 6 weeks over summer. And I remember that 6 weeks just being so long when I was a kid. But now 6 weeks, it's nothing, like it just flies by. But that's actually because when you're getting new experiences as a kid, it actually causes time to feel like it's slower.
Yeah, he goes into that.
Oh, does he?
And there's a lot of science behind why, as you get older, it feels like things are speeding up. And you're totally right. It has to do with novel experiences. I'm also going to go into a little bit of work from Claudia Hammond, and that's the wrong image. Where is I haven't done my screen cap. I've got another book coming up from Claudia Hammond. It's called Time Warped, and she talks about time perception, but from a slightly different angle. She talks about languages. And one example I can give you before we go into it is you can do an experiment where I would say to you, okay, there's a space in front of you which is now, like an imaginary space in front of your body. And where would you say tomorrow is? And if you're a Westerner, if you're an English speaker, you would say tomorrow is here, and you would move forward. Like, here's today and here's tomorrow, and yesterday's back here behind me. If you ask a Mandarin speaker, if you ask someone from China this question, they'll almost always go, oh, well, tomorrow's up here. And they'll put it above their head.
Oh, right. Isn't that cool?
So Westerners think time is, or we think of it as on the horizontal plane, whereas the Easterners think of it on the vertical plane, like tomorrow is up and yesterday is down.
Such a subtle thing, but isn't that fascinating?
And the Greeks and the Spaniards, for example, think about time differently. Like the Greeks think about time in terms of something that's filling up, whereas the Spaniards think about it as something that's getting bigger.
Right.
Whereas the English is a completely different one. But I've got some weird stuff coming up in Plus.
Okay, that's all we need to know. We just need to know there's some weird stuff coming up.
As usual, yeah.
Okay, well, let's jump into this. This is Medical Doctor has near-death experience, encounters UFO and Bigfoot. Yes, a rather strange title.
It's like a Daily Mail headline.
Yeah, it is. Well, I think that encounters UFOs and Bigfoot might be the subtitle, but that's not the way. Look, I'll link to the full thing, but I've got some clips here that I want to go through, but I'll link to the full thing in the show notes so you can go and check it out. But it's by Alan McGargle and Ron Mayer. You may recall them. They were featured quite prominently, of course, in the Bigfoot of Bailey, Colorado, and its portal. And let's just play a little bit of video from that previous documentary that they put together. This is just Alan talking to Ron, and they're discussing their experiences, if you recall, where they'd gone to this tree. And this tree was considered to be a sacred tree that had been essentially initiated by the Ute people. And in some ways, there was something connected to it. There was some creature associated with it.
That's right. Let's take a listen.
Yeah, so for me, I put my hands on the tree and I kind of put my head down a little and just focused on it. And it wasn't long, a few seconds even. I started hearing all these noises. It sounded like something splashing in the river and breaking and snapping tree limbs and this racket that didn't make any sense. And then I felt this really strong energy behind me. And as I sort of focused my attention onto it, I could visualize the space that energy took. I couldn't, I didn't turn around and look at it, but in my mind I could tell, it was the shape of this giant figure and it towered over me and it was right behind me and I could just feel it very strongly, the presence of it. And I just remember I kind of opened my eyes and I was looking at you, and right at that moment you said, "There's a creature behind you." And I was in such disbelief that you would say that, because I hadn't said a word about anything yet, that all I could do was just lean forward and just say, "What did you just say to me?" And you said, "There's a creature behind you." And all I could think to say was, "I know."
Refresh my memory. Did they actually see it? Or was it only caught on the Xbox Connect camera?
No, so they were seeing it. Ron was describing seeing it in his mind's third eye kind of thing. That's what he was experiencing. But there are a number of people that went to this particular tree that were psychically sensitive, I suppose you could call them, that claimed that they were able to see something at that tree. They were able to detect some type of energy. But I'll link to that documentary in the show notes, or that video in the show notes, so you can go back and watch that. I'll link to it, what we covered on the show as well. But this new one focuses on Dr. Melinda Greer. And her story is quite fascinating in that this particular documentary, it tries to set this premise, which is something that you and I have come across, Ben, in the years that we've covered these sorts of stories as well, that when people have an experience as a child, a paranormal experience as a child, it seems to lead to a lifelong series of encounters with high strangeness and other associated paranormal phenomena. So for Dr. Melinda Greer, and there's a full PDF that she's published here, there's a 35-page PDF where she describes these near-death experiences that she goes through. But she sets this
Where
one
is
up.
this? Does she have a website or something?
No, it's linked to through the Alternative Perceptions article, but I will link to it in the show notes so you can go and read it for yourself as well. But at the beginning of it, she kind of says, well, look, I was 4 or 5 years old. This was in the 1960s. And she said that she'd gone to open up a large screen door, quite a heavy screen door, to go outside or go somewhere. And as she had done so, apparently she had this elderly Siamese cat. And this Siamese cat had never been aggressive before at all. But she picks this cat up, and because it's elderly, it has arthritis or something. And as she's kind of struggling with this large door, it kind of, she knocks the cat, obviously, and agitates its arthritis. So the cat just chomps onto her, like bites deep into her. She said, I was bitten, up to, 3 or 4 times. And she said, I was kind of reeling from this bite, and she was only little. She said, I was only very little. And obviously she said it felt like it had gone deep into the skin. And she went and told her mother, and she said even the cat actually looked rather, and she writes here that the cat was clearly remorseful because, just responding to being hurt. But she said that after her mother had kind of doctored her wounds and had dealt with the wound, she said her arm started to swell.
Uh-oh.
So, and it started obviously clearly as a severe injury, and it became red hot and intensely painful and swollen. And her mother put her to bed. And she said at the time she didn't really know what death was, but she had this weird sense that something wasn't right.
Really?
Yeah, and I'm wondering if she was suffering from some type of deep tissue infection, and she even said possibly was suffering from sepsis, like blood poisoning or something like that. And she said, I remember thinking, oh my God, I think I'm going to die. And as she laid down, she said, my next recollections were being in this vast darkness of space, but it wasn't necessarily uncomfortable. In fact, she was quite intrigued by it. And if you just want to play the next video, this is her describing where she found herself, the space she was in.
I was suddenly transported to a realm that was like being out in space. And it was dark, but there were like stars and galaxies and swirling patterns of energies and things like that. And I felt like I was embraced. I don't remember having a body, but I was a focus of consciousness. And I was embraced by another focus of consciousness, if that makes any sense.
So very typical NDE.
Very typical NDE, except for the sense that, she's a young child, and it's like she's got no point of reference for this. And indeed, she said that because her family was deeply religious up until, they were deeply religious, but they didn't have a television because the church had said you can't have a television. But at some point it changed, like when she was 13. But at this particular age, she said aside from possibly a book, she had never seen galaxies or had never had kind of the influence of television or movies to show her that this is what this space was. So for her, she was in something that was very real, which wasn't being generated by her mind. So of course she comes back and, she has this kind of profound change in her. But of course, being so young, this set her up for a lifetime of experiences, of very strange experiences that aren't just near-death experiences, but it's also the entities associated with them, UFOs, aliens, interdimensional beings, and of course, Sasquatch, right? Sasquatch and Bigfoot come up quite a lot in this. So the documentary kind of moves on to this weird synchronicity that kind of pops up, and it relates to the location, which is known as the Crystal Mine, right? So this is the Broad Crystal Mine.
This is in Arkansas,
This is in Arkansas. And this happened, it all kicked off in July of 2021. You've got Cheryl Murphy. Cheryl Murphy and her husband Orville have lived there for, a number of years. And nothing really unusual had happened. But as will be explained in the documentary at the moment, they'd gone there with this intention of kind of setting up like what could it be? Like a place where bands could go and play. There was like a little stage there, and it was a large, open grass field, so people could come and they could have little music festivals and that kind of stuff. But they very rapidly decided not to do that because of all the crystals that were there. But let me just explain to you.
Why?
So, because this particular area, right, has got, it's like a big tourist thing. It's like quartz crystals, all through pockets of them, all through the ground.
I just Googled crystal mines, Arkansas, and the Wagner crystal mines came up. I don't know if it's the same place.
No, it's not. different, but it's all around the same area.
There's some YouTube channels of guys that they're basically crystal channels, and they go out to these locations and you watch these videos and they're just hunting for these giant crystals. My son loves watching them.
Yeah, it's
like
cool.
treasure hunting. They pull out this giant geode of something and it's this big purple crystal.
Yeah, so of course, when they get this property, they're like, oh, we could actually potentially make more money out of running it as like a crystal tourism place.
Right.
But then strange things started happening, and perhaps it's not that coincidental that they're on a location that's got all these crystals, all these quartz crystals, and strange paranormal activity starts happening. But just play that Cheryl video for me, please.
The original plan for the 60-acre property purchased in 2012 by Cheryl and Orville Murphy was to build a campground and put on classic rock concerts on the stage, seen here.
I see.
That changed when they learned that their property contained an abundance of crystal pockets. Orville and Cheryl jumped on the economic possibility of having people come and dig for crystals on their property. Then everything changed one night in 2017.
What happened was, on the hill behind me, we were standing kind of looking at the stars at night, and we saw the horizon start to glow, and then these 3 huge beams of light appeared on the hill behind me, and they lasted about, maybe 8 to 10 seconds, and then everything went black. And of course, we were like stunned, like, what on earth is that?
Yeah, it's crazy. And I'm sorry, I said 2021. That was 2017 that they had this particular experience, but they've had numerous experiences since then, of course. But she's absolutely right. I mean, you're there on a rural property, and all of a sudden these weird giant pillars of light kind of shoot up into the sky and then abruptly stop. Like, what on earth is that? What is going on in this particular location? Well, it just so happens that Orville, her husband or co-owner of this particular property, he noticed that there was something very unusual about the light itself. There was a weird property. Now, when we talk about lights in UFO encounters, there's a whole wealth of research about the unusual properties of the light. You know, in some circumstances, abductees say that they're taken aboard craft and there's this recurring theme that the light seems to come from no singular source, but there's no source for it. Or the stories of where people are being pursued by UFOs on roads late at night, and they say their headlight beams, which light can't bend unless it's bent, but the light itself will actually bend almost magnetically, even though that's impossible for it to do so. These lights also had a very peculiar property.
Oh, that's my cue to play something.
I noticed the trees, picnic tables, and everything, and the light was really bright. Nothing was casting a shadow. So was it actual white light like we normally see? At the time, we had a big flagpole right there, and the flagpole was not casting a shadow.
It's not casting a shadow. What is this light? What is the light? This is clearly not light which is adhering to our understanding of physics. So already it starts to get a little bit spooky and uncomfortable. But of course, with these sorts of stories, when you have people saying, well, you know, we've seen these astonishing, strange lights, usually you'll find that there's been a build-up to this kind of thing happening as well. And indeed that happened because their son, Josh White, just said that, yeah, I went out there and I was talking to my parents and he described that they'd been experiencing orbs on the property.
First time I ever visited this property since my parents bought it was in February 2017. And I arrived that night and they had been telling me that they mentioned they'd been seeing orbs in the trees at night for a couple of weeks. And I was fascinated by that and didn't know what they were, didn't know exactly what they were talking about. So Orville and I went in the backyard and sure enough, we saw over about a 30-minute period, we saw a couple dozen orbs pop up from 500 feet away in the trees. I asked them what they thought it was, and they thought it might be crystal energy, maybe coming up out of the ground.
And look, that sounds very new age, right? Oh, it's crystal. But no, it could be like some type of piezoelectric effect, which is being produced by the quartz. We know that there
will that produce light activity?
Yeah, absolutely it will. Yeah, so I don't know if that's a seismically active area, but yeah, they've got such a large volume of crystalline rock there. Possibly that could be generating lights, but this doesn't seem to be the case.
I came across their website today. It looks like they're leveraging these experiences. Like if you go out there to Camp Crystal Mine, this is why you go out there, because there's a lot of weird stuff apart from pockets of crystals.
Yeah, there's a huge amount of weird stuff. And of course, the moment that I hear that, Because at this point, right, the documentary didn't mention, apart from the title, of course, but it really hadn't gone into anything about Bigfoot. But the moment that it mentioned these weird orbs, I'm like, well, we do know, especially from people like Stan Gordon, that there is Bigfoot activity associated with orbs. There are, multiple reports of this. So I was like, this is setting the scene for something which is going on. But in fact, Josh saw these lights as well, these weird lights, these 3 pillars that took off. But they noticed that they were in a particular area. And this area they call the event site. And we'll come back to a video in the moment that actually gives you an overview, a flyover of this particular property so you can kind of orient yourself and work out where you are. But I just want to show you what happens when Orville and his son go up to this site where they'd seen these lights. And there's a few things, right? So first of all, there's plenty of trees around there. So there's fallen leaves and branches that have kind of been knocked down, and like they're everywhere except for the fact where it seems like these lights have gone up. It's pretty much clear. Like it's clear. It's like someone's brushed it aside or something has some kind of moved it away.
So there could have been lights there. There could have been...
It could have been the lights that have done this. It's somehow either sucked everything in or it's thrown everything to the side.
No, I meant someone could have had a setup there, like some kind of beams being projected or
that's a
on the
possibility.
back of their truck or something.
Yeah, that occurred to me, and it's like it is a possibility as well. But let's be honest. Who's driving around with such high-powered lights, skylights, that they can shoot lights into someone's property just to grab attention? The only thing could be that, you did line up just before that, they're now marketing this. But look at the website quality.
I didn't insinuate
it's not like
any trickery.
I don't think that that's really what's going on here. And also you have to, and we'll get to it as well, we have to listen to the experiences of these people describing, what they've seen and what they've experienced. But let's go back to the site because they go up to what they call as the event site and they find that there's a strange property that's been applied to everything, which is metal up there.
We're just kind of baffled. And the next morning, Orville and I go up to the hill where the beams had appeared, and that area we now call the event site. Orville starts pointing out to me that metal objects had been moved around. There was a sign that had been toppled over. Fence posts were leaning at a 45-degree angle. And he later came to find out that all of those metal objects had become magnetized.
That's weird.
They're all magnetized. So he pulls out a compass. Just play the next one. This is Orville with a compass going up to just a star picket, like a fence post.
Yeah.
Like they shouldn't be magnetized.
So if you see here, the fence post is north on the top, south on the bottom. Come over this way, on this post, it is south on the top and north on the bottom. It's upside down.
And it's consistently like that, I take it, since you...
All over through here.
Wow.
Bizarre.
All through there.
Something happened.
Something very strange has happened. This isn't just simply light for these materials. Now, is it possible? Is it not possible that for some reason those star pickets had been magnetized previously? Is it
reasonable question?
Is it possible? But there's a scene in this documentary, which I haven't included here in the cut, but he grabs a couple of paper clips, pardon me, and he takes the paper clips and they're not magnetic, right? They're not magnetized. He applies them to this fence post, to one of these star pickets. It takes a couple of moments. They're magnetized. They're magnetic. They stick to each other. They're kind of hovering off it. So it's got enough energy in this to actually magnetize other things around it. Now, is it possible that this is some type of natural phenomena? Of course it is. Of course that's going on. But then all the other activity that goes on around it suggests that there is something of high strangeness which is occurring in this location. So let's go back to, if you search for this particular location on YouTube, online, any of these locations, you actually find there are numerous videos that show strange levitating rocks which have been seen and recorded at this site.
What?
So rocks that will move around the event site. So this next video, but it's basically a trail camera which has recorded the movement, the levitation of the rocks at this site.
Okay.
Where the levitating rocks were filmed before our visit.
So only very
it's
short.
right. Yeah, but it's not really the video, is it? It's more like stop photography.
Yeah, the trail camera has taken a photograph every time something's moved, and they've just applied it in their video editing software. But there are other videos online where you can find that there are these rocks, and there's rocks, like these levitating rocks.
And it's not, sorry to cut you off,
No,
it's not
please.
the ones that you see on the desert where they're being pushed along the sand
No.
by some kind of condensation or something.
Exactly.
They're being moved.
They're being up.
Up
They're
and down.
Moved
Let me
up and down.
scroll through the video again. So that one that they've got on the circle down the bottom.
Look at that big one. The middle, the one in the middle there. If you're watching the video, if you're not watching the video, I'm sorry, there's a very large rock in the middle, and it basically is moving into 3 different locations.
Yeah,
it's huge.
I mean, again, you need a video. Like, we need a video that's running, because anyone can just obviously come and move these.
That's the thing as well. So look, as I said, I need you to suspend your skepticism a little bit for this, because we can't rule out the possibility, once again, that for attention or for commercial purposes, they've just basically moved a bunch of rocks around and gone, well, there's levitating rocks. Although, strangely enough, this levitating rock phenomenon, or at least rocks being flung about in poltergeist style, comes up a lot more in other people that are connected to this site. So the next one is we had to, what have I got here? Bigfoot in Arkansas. Oh, okay then.
Kind of a spoiler.
No.
What's the next video? Bigfoot shows up.
The way that I've titled it, because we'll just have a look here.
Well, I saw they published a book back in 2021. Experience Sasquatch, a field guide to connecting.
Look at the size of that title.
Yes, they're masterful with their titles. And this comes in at a whopping 30 pages, this book.
Right.
So, yeah, obviously we're going to be looking at some Sasquatch activity.
Tom Jones and Shelley.
Well, this was linked from the Board Camp Crystal website.
Right. I don't know who these names are.
So that's Tom and Shelley have their new book out.
Okay. This is not the people we're talking about. We're talking about Cheryl and Orville Murphy, who are connected to this particular site.
I don't know what's going on there.
So next, so this is where all this strangeness goes on. And we go back to the Bigfoot of Bailey, Colorado, and its portal. Of course, with these sorts of stories and these experiences, you bring in people which could be considered to be unusual, eccentric, right? Unusual and eccentric people. No, freaks isn't the right word. Like freaks, I know that we can sometimes be critical.
Degenerates.
No, nothing like that at all. I think these are people that genuinely believe in the experiences that they are having, and they seem to be genuine. They come across as genuine, whether or not it's a real experience. Well, then that's for
lunatics.
No, nothing like that. But we have Gail Duncan, who is a modern day shaman.
Yeah, you're going to line it up for me.
And you have Garrett Fowler, who is a Navajo medicine man, right? Now, Gail describes something quite intriguing. And look, I feel like the intelligence behind the phenomenon orchestrates things, right? And we find this quite commonly. It's like you find these trends of where there'll be a flap of something, but you'll have groups of people that are not connected to each other have a similar dream that directs them to a certain location, or people will have these weird synchronicities that kind of get them to meet up with other people, and then they go through these weird paranormal experiences. It's like the phenomenon itself is using us as pawns, right? It's this chess game for it, and that actually becomes more relevant when we go back to the story of Dr. Melinda Greer and her near-death experience, but the follow-up experiences that she has later on throughout her life. It's like she touched with the paranormal. She touched with the intelligence behind the veil, and it now is directing her life in some way for some very strange reason. But we go back to Gail, and Gail, who calls herself a modern day shaman, she said that during the lockdowns and during the pandemic, she couldn't go anywhere. But for whatever reason, and yes, I know, just let me say it, she claims that a Sasquatch came to her. Like some Sasquatch, I don't know, it was in a meditative state. It clearly wasn't, in her waking life. But this Sasquatch was like, you need to go to this particular location. You need to go to the Crystal Mine, in Arkansas. You need to go there. And she was like, oh, and they couldn't because it was lockdowns and it was COVID. They couldn't go. But eventually she gets to go. And when she gets to go there, all these weird synchronicities start happening and they connect up with other people. But I'll let her explain exactly what had taken place.
All right, let's take a listen.
I had this vision. It was a very, very large, black, huge Sasquatch saying, you need to go to Arkansas. And I was like, okay. So I mentioned to Garrett, he goes, yeah, I told you about Orville's place, the board camp, Crystal Mine. And I said, I think that's where we're supposed to go. But it was a while since we couldn't travel then. And then, was it February, I think, of this year? I told him again because I got the you need to go again. And then that's how we ended up going there.
Initially, when I first went, so when I went there for the first time, immediately, energetically, I was already picking up sort of a spaciness that was going on, a sense of ungrounding. But also, too, I was tapping into what the Star Nations refer to as an underground base that was embedded in that hill there where the beams had popped out.
That's brilliant. As soon as he said Star Nations, I knew what we were in for. Now, for those listening to the audio, let me just describe the scene for you. They have a plushy Sasquatch in between them, lovely couple. And the husband has a...
I don't know if they're married. I don't think they're married.
Well, there's something. The husband has a Sasquatch, blue Sasquatch T-shirt on. So clearly Sasquatch is kind of their thing.
I haven't included it, but in the actual documentary or the video itself, he shows up to the tree, which I'll get to, right? But he shows up to the original tree from the Bigfoot of Bailey, Colorado. And he starts doing this weird, I don't know if it's a Navajo, like, speech. I don't know what he's doing, but he starts like howling at the tree. Yeah. That's one thing, right? I'm not judging that. What I am judging is like written across his T-shirt is something like "I love squashies" or "squatchies." I'm like, ooh.
We're firmly in Kiwani territory.
That's exactly
folks.
what I was thinking. Immediately when I was watching this, I'm like, ooh, I wonder if Kiwani stuff is going to come. And in a way it does. So, okay, to make this very clear, a Sasquatch has come to Gail and said, you've got to go to Arkansas. They go to Arkansas and they go to the site of these lights. And this is where Garrett is like, oh, I can feel the energy. Like, I can feel it. Like, there's this base there. So what does he do? Well, he psychically dives into the base.
So psychically, energetically, I started journeying into inside. And what I discovered was that this was a star base, like a base from inner Earth from way long time ago. And that base is still very much operating. And it was utilizing crystalline technology to create these systems, like the anti-gravitational systems. So I was picking up that this base was there for a very, very long time.
So that's why you've got the levitating rocks.
Is there a Bigfoot staffed there? He's just been there for a millennium?
No.
That's why he's so angry?
But there are portal guardians.
You know, I'm laughing at it, but this is what the remote viewers in the show that you missed a couple of weeks ago, this is what the remote viewers reported back in the 1970s, and it was followed up in the 1980s, and they remote viewed 4 underground bases around the world, including one in Australia that was staffed by pretty pissed off extraterrestrials because they'd been there for so long.
Well, apparently later on we find out that it's not just Sasquatch creatures that are there, it's also human beings that are at this particular base. But this is really the hot spot. Like, this is the cornerstone of all this activity which is taking place. But also, I mean, Garrett's an interesting person because when he goes there, he starts to realize that this is a part of a connected grid of I don't know, I'm not going to say crystal technologies because that just sounds just so like new age, but
we're way beyond worrying about
We're worried. Yeah, that's way gone now. But this links back to Bailey, Colorado with the tree, right? So it goes, the video goes into describing what the Utes would do about essentially they would give a blessing to a tree, and then the tree would agree, and they would modify this tree. And this tree would act as like a portal gateway for this underground network. So in a roundabout way, this base allegedly connects back to the tree, right? That's at Bailey, Colorado. And that's in that previous documentary that we covered of where they're like, there's a Sasquatch thing. So what do they do? Garrett and Gail and Alan and Ron, they all head back to Bailey, Colorado. So here is Garrett going around where there were other trees in this location, describing this energy network that he finds with these trees.
So even though it's modified, but this part right here is the arrow that goes through. So usually a lot of times I'll stand right here and just kind of feel into it, and you can see way over there, there's another tree. There's a V tree like this, and there's a frequency that is shooting through. And so when I first approached, it hit me right in the third eye, and this part just opened like this. So that also lines up. Sometimes there's another tree down there somewhere. So you kind of have to pay attention, start looking around beyond just your normal peripheral of your normal vision. So one thing that I noticed about this alignment, across the ways on the cliff, you see that weird bent-shaped tree?
Yeah.
There's a hook. So that says to me, look how it's lining up from this angle. If you stand right here, see how it's hooked into that hook? So that frequency is coming down through this way. So it's aligning with this part. Like this part's becoming an arrow now with that hook across the waist.
So all very abstract and new age stuff, as I said.
Yeah.
But there's something to it. It is weird that you've got this particular location which is associated with strange activity. You've got a guy who's claiming to be sensitive, finding these trees that clearly are modified in some way. Whether or not it's a natural phenomenon or it has been done by someone else or it's been done by the Ute people, did they actually understand some energy or some type of path of, passing this knowledge around? Maybe that's what's going on. But while we're here back in Bailey, Colorado...
I'm just looking at the first Sasquatch of the night. It's the one in the background there.
I knew you'd say
She looks like she's over it.
They look energetically drained. And I wonder sometimes, and I feel you. Like this stuff would be draining.
Yeah. This gay Indian guy crapping on about psychic trees is just draining all their energy.
Nothing gay about him. Like, we don't know that. So we've got Alan and Ron. Well, they return to the tree from the beginning of the episode where they were describing, they were seeing a Bigfoot. Let's see what they have to say about returning to the tree.
Ron went back to the sacred tree as they had done 2 years before.
When I touched the tree, I shut my eyes, and almost immediately, this Native American woman, middle-aged, kind of showed up. She was in an Indian dress. I thought, oh, wow, that's cool. And then all of a sudden, she was gone. And these entities, creatures, started pouring through into my mind's eye, pouring through like this. And they were...
I remember this.
Once in a while, I would see a Bigfoot, or I would see another human being, mostly Native Americans, and it got so intense when I started mumbling to myself, and eventually there's nothing I could do except I was being pushed backwards and I just let go.
But this is 2 years later. This is when they returned, but he's seeing the same thing, right? So
I remember from the first documentary, they were describing similar things going on when they were touching that tree.
Well, when I heard that, though, it reminded me of the episode we covered only recently of the guy describing like a portal opening and a bunch of red-eyed Bigfoot creatures, like kind of, or they weren't Bigfoot creatures, but it's the same,
something.
Yeah, it's the same kind of thing. But he mentions there that there's this, what did he say? It was like a Native American-looking woman. She seems to be some type of portal guardian. And Gail claims, because she's standing off to the side, that without knowing what he's describing, that she sees exactly the same thing.
As you were doing that, I just saw her in the background, and she told me, this is a purpose in it. So we talked about a portal. That tree is a portal.
So, yeah, I mean, this guide basically says what we already know is that this particular tree is a portal of some kind, which links back to what's going on.
And this is connected to the underground crystal network base.
That's right.
How's Bigfoot connected again? He's just around.
He's just around. He just shows up. He guides people. He tells them where to go.
And there's also Native American shamans in other dimensions. What's their purpose?
They're portal guardians.
Portal guardians. Guarding it from whom?
From people like us, from getting into them.
What's the purpose of the portals?
Well, look, see, where this documentary, and I can give it away right now, right? Because we need to go back. Because this documentary, it's supposed to be about Dr. Melinda Greer, but it's not really about her. We're kind of going off on these tangents of all these, weird experiences, but we will get back to her. But ultimately, and this is the thing, she opens up describing the near-death experience, and at the very end, she's like, ultimately, it's about love. And I'm just like, oh, and unfortunately, a lot of people, I shouldn't say unfortunately, but the way that this is approached, it is all very much, it's love and it's important for human beings. And it's like, and it does start, it does start crossing a little bit into the corny lapsaritas kind of feel about it. Not exactly, but we're kind of there. But what we have to do is we have to find out, well, what else is going on? So this particular documentary focuses on 3 areas. It's not just, Bailey. It's not just the crystal mine location. It's also a place called Long Lake. Now, Long Lake is I've written it down here. It's Long Lake Resort. It's in Poto in Oklahoma. And it's a location where Dr. Melinda Greer goes to. She goes to holiday, and there's like little cabins there that you can relax. Well, she ended up having and of course, she claims that her NDE has caused her to witness entities that would just dematerialize before her, very strange things taking place. But she's had 3 encounters with Sasquatch-type creatures at this location. But also while Alan's there, and this is where it kind of crosses more into like ghost hunting kind of stuff, Alan goes along and there's this weird synchronicity where they believe that that portal guide that they saw at Bailey, Colorado, it's also hanging around at Long Lake. So this is Alan and Melinda sitting down using their ghost hunting equipment to see if they can pick up some type of EVP.
Almost immediately, a voice seems to say, Alan.
He touched me. Can't.
Was this an encounter with the Native American gatekeeper from Bailey? Could this site be linked to the other two places in ways beyond our understanding? The possibilities are extraordinary.
Without any information whatsoever, I'm going to say yes. Don't question it, just accept it.
What's the geographical connection between, what would you say, it was in Poteau, Oklahoma?
Yeah.
And
I'm sorry if I mispronounced
Isn't
that.
the other location Colorado?
Yes.
And so
the
there's
other one's Arkansas.
Quite a distance between these places.
Well, a reasonable distance. It's not that, like, geographically, if you were to look at it on a map, it's actually not that far away. But the suggestion here is that
Why would there be a connection? Because they go there on holiday?
No, because Melinda has had these strange experiences there with these Sasquatch entities, right? But it's not just Sasquatch. She's also had experiences with UFOs.
Of course, and that's a prompt for me to play something.
It is a prompt.
It's the way you looked at
I
me.
need to, like, wink at you.
UFOs.
Yeah.
UFOs.
Well over a dozen times. I saw the triangular one here in this area, and then I saw the last, well, not the last one in 2007 was like a drop of mercury in the sky. It was like a silver mirror. It looked like if you took a drop of mercury and put it in the sky, and it had a slight wobble to it.
So it was cut off there a little bit in the audio, but she's seen a triangular-shaped UFO numerous times, right? And obviously with this is all going to come together. You know how I work. Like, this is all going to come together a little bit later.
Oh, it's all going to make sense and be 100% convincing.
Oh, it's not going to be 100%
in the
convincing.
plus extension.
No, but she mentions these things that kind of pop up, right? But before we go back to this connection to the UFO, because you're asking the question, what does Long Lakes have to do with this? Well, it's all intricately connected, but we just don't know why yet. So let's describe one of the most profound experiences that, Melinda has, where she said that she was in this particular area. She'd gone for a walk one afternoon with her husband. Her husband had gone for a run in the opposite direction, and she'd parked their truck, or they'd parked their truck. And when she was coming back from her walk, she encountered something very strange.
We pulled off the scenic drive and drove north along Goats Bluff Road and parked our SUV.
I got to about right here, and I glanced up at the vehicle, and there's this big, tall person, standing on the other side of the vehicle. It was a Dodge Dakota pickup truck, and he seemed to be bending over and looking in the back window. And my first feeling was, hey, what are you doing? And then I took in the situation and realized he was huge, and I kind of wanted to stay quiet because I didn't want him to notice me. Right about that time that I'm looking in there at this person looking in our vehicle, he suddenly there's this bang on the top of that outhouse, and that startles him, it startles me. I look this way, and then I look back at him to see what he's doing, and he's running around in front of the truck. So he runs in front of that tree. He went up that bank there like it didn't even exist, without any kind of transition and stride, nothing, just went up it, and then he seemingly just was gone.
I should point out for the audio listeners that whenever she says a person, they're flashing up renderings of Bigfoot.
Gigantic Bigfoot type creature.
Running like Usain Bolt.
It's not Long Lake. Long Lake is back before, but with this particular location. So this is along a road that runs between Arkansas and Oklahoma. And this is in the vicinity of the Crystal Mine area. So this is why she's, this is this weird connection, right? So this woman is having all these experiences. Now, just before we go ahead, we have to return back to the Crystal Mine site, the active site, because Alan goes there.
Where the underground base is.
Where the underground base is, right? He goes there with Melinda. And of course, he brings along his modified Xbox 360 Kinect camera.
Finally some science and tech on the scene.
Tech. Now, this very briefly describes what this is, but Melinda tries to communicate with an entity that is showing up on the camera, but not in their view.
Alan senses a presence and fires up his SLS camera, a device developed by Microsoft for its Xbox 360 that projects an infrared pattern that detects human-like figures. Human-like figures that are invisible to the naked eye.
You want to walk up there?
There it is.
You think it's next to this slanted pole? Or
Right in, it's like right in front of that pole.
Ever the intrepid investigator, Dr. Greer walks up to where the entity is appearing.
It's flipped. Around.
Then the entity begins to interact with Dr. Greer.
All the way, face the magnetic pole. Now reach your hand out. Okay, a little more. Oh, it's reaching. Move your hand down just a little bit. It's gotten down real low. Oh, it just punched out.
Just disappeared. Got freaked out.
Starting to look a little bit X-rated at the end there. I don't know what Bigfoot was doing. He's getting down into a certain position.
So the implication is that there's some invisible Sasquatch which Alan had somehow sensed and she was trying to touch, and as soon as she tries to touch it, the thing disappears. But I'm like,
who could have predicted that this Kinect camera could have brought down the Bigfoot conspiracy?
I know. The world's just completely topsy-turvy, Ben. Like, we just don't know what to make of it. That's kind of immaterial, though. I just wanted to include it because how could we not after it was so heavily featured in the previous documentary? But what we find is we have to go back now to where she'd previously seen that Bigfoot creature along this particular road that she travels. And she said that the most terrifying encounter she had, and keep in mind, right, at the end of the documentary, she's like, it's all about love. But it's not, because she describes interacting.
But it's not.
Like a terrifying interaction with a Sasquatch at that same area later on.
It was just dead silence. There were no
Pause
birds.
factor.
All of the sounds that had been in the forest were just gone. It was all gone. And all of a sudden, over here, above the trees, I could sense, and I don't know how I could sense, but I could sense two presences. They were communicating about me. He said something, conveyed something to the effect of, she's impossible. Okay. I don't know, it was weird. But the thing that disturbed me was I was like a lab rat. It was not a pleasant situation because it was like if you had a particularly bright horse that could count numbers or something, you know? The fact that they hadn't scared me was unexpected to them, but it was.
Did she just compare herself to like an intelligent horse?
Yes.
Okay.
The one that was responsible for me in some way, I have no idea why, but had a sense of ownership, responsibility. I don't know what.
Listen to the words she's using. Ownership, lab rat.
She's not in control.
She's not in control.
Well, I mean, I was going to say the only thing that's given us any kind of objective external evidence has been the reports of the lights and maybe the rocks moving. Like that's something tangible. Everything else is this Indian guy going, well, see this tree that leads to a portal over there, and see that portal over there that leads to that portal over there. And then the
very unfair,
the physiognomy of these women is always like the fat white woman. Like it's
That's
all the
not
paranormal physiognomy is the fat white woman with the visor.
That is not fair.
And they always have the stories to tell, but there's nothing.
Okay, all right.
We can take from it. There's nothing tangible.
You want tangible? You want proof? Let's head back to the crystal mine. Let's go and see Orville. So what happens is you've got Alan and Ron. They grab hold of Melinda, obviously not physically, and they take her back to the location of the crystal mine, to the active site. And they go and speak with Orville. You know, Orville, who is the owner of the property and had weird experiences in light. They start talking about their experiences with UFOs. And it just so happens that Orville has video evidence for what he saw.
We had a scope off of an M60A1 tank.
Take us away. There's one to see it.
Scope, so we got some great vision of the sky, right?
Right.
Got the
Okay, see what I mean? We got a man A man goes out there with his scope and his video camera.
His wife was there.
He's not out there going, oh, see that tree that connects over there? And I got the sense that there's two beings.
I can't agree with you.
He's going out there and he's getting evidence.
It's only coincidental.
Okay.
Camcorder sitting there. We were getting ready. He was going to stay on the stage for a couple of more hours. I'm getting ready to go up there. We have our backs to the sky, standing there talking. The camera is in between us, and we had a large triangular craft came down. You can see it start appearing. It's about 250 feet across. You can see the 3 dots for the corners.
Yeah.
And we played it real fast and then slow, and you can tell even fast it doesn't move, it doesn't lose its perspective. So you can tell it's a single unit, right?
Right.
And it came down, got real bright, and then just went like this and went over the trees. It lasts about 7 minutes.
That was cool.
That was really cool. So if you weren't watching,
That was really
which
cool.
is totally fine, by the way, it cuts to this night vision footage, and you see what appears to be lights in a triangular formation of what is consistent with a triangular black craft moving across the night sky.
Now we've got something.
So what's the connection to Melinda, right? Well, it just so happens that Melinda has also been living in this area for decades. Listen to what she has to say.
Oh, next video.
So I saw that triangular craft
Yeah.
on numerous occasions when I lived over there.
Mm-hmm.
And on twice it went over the top of me that
Yeah.
time, and then another time when I was up at Panoramic Vista on Winding Stair Mountain
Right.
on the Tuolumne Drive. I was sitting out there in a lawn chair and I was stargazing and I was kicked back and it was the same thing. It came over and you don't hear it
Yeah.
until it's directly overhead, and then there's a very soft sound. It's not like a jet engine. It's a soft, like almost like a fan.
I don't believe this woman. It's like they show her something that is actually interesting, and all of a sudden she's saying, oh, I saw that too. And then she's immediately got a story about it.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. And because like she has had quite a considerably varied number of
Yeah, it's like she
experiences.
can't be left out of the experiences that are being reported. She's got, oh, that happened to me too, by the way.
Maybe, but I think also this is the case of what happens with this phenomena, that it's just so bizarre and so odd that it makes people sound like they're lying. It makes people sound like, because it's deliberately designed to create confusion and subterfuge so people can't really understand or, target what's going on. But one thing we always say about paranormal phenomena, and more so as I get older, I insist on this: don't engage with it. Don't engage. It's not a good idea to go and engage. But of course, Alan goes and does exactly
What if it
that.
lands on your crystal farm?
Well, it does, right? So Alan is hanging around the crystal farm, and so he goes out one evening, and the levitating rocks start being thrown around him.
Diplomatic community.
So look,
You could hear it there.
yeah, you can hear it. He's out there in the woods. Is it possible that there's animals around? In fact, you pointed out there's this cat that ran past. Maybe it could have done that. But multitudes of people that have been at that site have reported something very similar. These strange sounds. I mean, it's not just a small rock. Like they're big boulders, the size of footballs or a microwave, being dropped from a significant height. It's like, it's got a poltergeist kind of feel to it. It's also got a Sasquatch feel to it, because Sasquatch throw rocks.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, we've got Garrett and Gail, who have also been to that exact site. They've witnessed rock falls, but the rocks are hot.
Orville built the fire.
And then I think I went to go put my drum down, and they thought I dropped something, but it was a pretty big rock. It's like thunk, and that's when Orville go, look, and so we all saw that. Of course, that rock wasn't there before.
And how he measured it too was, he's like, when that happens, he touched it immediately. He said, when you touch it immediately, he goes, you can still feel the heat coming off of it. And then he compared it to another rock that we thought was already sitting there, and he said it's going to be completely cold.
So did you touch the rock?
I did.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
She was the closest one to it.
So I'm like I said, I'm very sensitive. It's like, ooh, it was just like shaking. I could feel the energy. It says, that's not a normal rock that was just sitting here. And you can tell, you can tell if a rock's been there because you can see, like when rain or something kind of digs it. No, it literally just got there.
So very poltergeisty, with the hot rocks coming through. It's like, the poltergeist of Humpty Doo here in Australia, which was reported about hot rocks falling through, but multiple poltergeist reports have the same kind of thing. So it's not just a Sasquatch picking up something, a rock that's there and flinging it. There's this other high strangeness that's associated with it. So are they throwing things out of some type of dimensional realm. Is that what's going on? So this brings us to kind of the coup de grace of what's occurring here. There's something very, very strange going on, but it does connect back to these weird interdimensional Sasquatch. So let's take a look at the site. We need to understand what's going on at the site. Here's a flyover just describing where the stage is and where the activity site is.
Here is the perspective from the stage. Off in the distance is the ridge line, containing the event site nestled among the trees.
Okay, so not...
That was thrilling.
Oh, completely thrilling. But I think you need to see the video because you need to understand exactly what's going on. So you can see there that you've got the event site towards the back there. And it's important to note. So when we come back to this corner here, this comes to this event that took place in, I think it was December of 2023.
So it's like from the stage to where the arrow pointing is probably a football field's length, right?
Yeah, maybe a little bit more. Yeah, but not considerably that far. So there's 2 trail cameras that they have on their property, and their trail camera points in 2 kind of directions, but towards that particular location, that activity site. So it can capture the light, right? So you've got Orville, who was hanging out with his friend Jason Head. So Jason apparently was the one who came up with the idea of, hey, rather than using this as some type of, music venue, why don't we use it as a crystal tourism spot? They had a very strange experience one evening when they'd gone to light a bonfire, but I should highlight, the bonfire just wasn't for the sake of a bonfire. I know it sounds wild, right? But Orville and Cheryl, although I don't believe Cheryl was there, they'd gotten themselves connected with some type of worldwide meditation. And at 9 p.m. or maybe 7 p.m., whatever it was that evening, they all had to light bonfires all around the world, and everyone had to meditate and focus their energy, right? But you shouldn't do that at a site of strange paranormal activity because it causes weird things to happen. This goes on for a little bit longer. Let's play what happened on this particular evening to Orville.
This is where you ran into the light?
That's where I went into the light.
What Orville
ran into the
was
light?
referring to is his alien abduction.
What?
We're eager to hear all about it.
Keep going.
What is happening?
Keep going.
Did he get abducted to the underground base?
Yes.
Was that
You're
blonde,
giving it away.
Was that blonde woman there?
No.
She was like, oh, by the way, that's right. I was abducted there too. That happened to me too.
She was already there when they got abducted.
The abduction event was recorded on 2 security cameras on December 27th, 2023.
No.
Here we can see Orville and Jason Head around the fire that they lit to coincide with a worldwide meditation event.
And then start a cedar fire over at the medicine wheel, and at 7 o'clock, and everybody's going to start chanting, thousands of people, right? So we're like, okay, so Jason and I, we get the fire going, and we're just kind of standing there, and on top of the hill, you can see big beam of light on the ground.
Okay, so I cut it off there because I want to skip over, because in the actual documentary, it kind of jumps back and forth all over the place, so I've very roughly cut this up and put it back together. So now we need to go to Jason, who gives the other description of what's taking place. So this is Jason Head. He was no longer in the area, so they had to interview him over Skype or over Zoom. But here's Jason describing what he saw that particular evening.
We were sitting around the fire, and we had the Indian music playing, and you could just tell the energy just kept getting stouter and stouter and stouter. And we looked up toward the top of the hill, or Orville noticed it. I don't recall just how we first noticed it, but there was this huge column of light.
You can see Jason and Orville around the campfire. The beam of light shows up. Here, in slow motion from the left side perspective, we can see that the beam of light fades up, as opposed to turning on like most everyday light bulbs. Back at the campfire, we can see that once the light was spotted, Orville moved forward and took a few pictures, which did not turn out. However, Jason, with his cell phone, took 2 pictures. The first one, we can see the light.
And we were only supposed to monitor the fire, and everybody, thousands of people meditating all over the world. And there it comes. We're trying to get pictures with our cell phone.
That's the photo I showed you earlier that Jason got.
And look at that thing. It is just a pillar, a tube of light that's about 2 feet off the ground, 8 foot across, and maybe 100 foot tall. But if you notice, it's insane bright, but it's not lighting up the forest.
Right.
Campfires lighting up the trees more than it is.
Yeah. And
It is a bit strange.
I have a lantern. It's electric. Get it on, and I'm on it. I stopped, set the lantern down, turned my video on. Nothing on my phone went dead the minute I got anywhere near it.
So what did it look like from up close?
It looked like a tube of light.
Yes.
So I was thinking about this. And of course, because this is a trail cam or a security cam, the way that it's a low quality recording that you're seeing.
Yeah.
But when you look at the light, right? So he's right. You've got the fire roaring, and you've got all the trees around the fire lit up in that certain way. But this particular light, the way that it's lit up, unless the only way I could think that they could fake this, right? It would be very difficult unless you got some type of large inflatable tube that you lit up from the inside. But when you compare that, the size of that light to those trees, it is enormous.
Yeah, I mean, what's odd about it is it looks like the source of the light is up in the trees versus something on the ground like the campfire. So you can clearly see there that it's actually up near the canopy.
Look, we can't rule out the possibility that, they've used some sophisticated video editing software to do this. But in saying that, look at the title of their book.
Sophisticated is not what comes to mind when this guy's on the screen or anyone else.
So I actually think it adds to some a genuine feeling to what's going on here. But it doesn't end here. So you've got Orville, as you heard before. Well, he ran into the light.
He walked into it.
So now I'm going into the light.
By the time I got there, Orville was disappearing into the light, and I reached in to grab him. When I did, it sucked me in.
After the two men entered this beam of pure light, they were dropped off approximately an hour later at 2 different locations.
It was a strange experience. There's no real way I can describe what went on while I was in the light. I just remember seeing all these vibrant colors, and it was like I was moving 1,000 miles an hour through a dead space. It was like it was free floating. It was like I could nearly see myself in this tunnel, and it was like I was in a vacuum. There was no sound. It was just the light.
This is the perfect chef's kiss. Everything about
Isn't it surreal?
The guy describing the story, his accent, how he reacted, that his friend walks into the light, he tries to grab him, they get teleported to 2 different locations.
Oh, it gets better. It gets better. So this is just Jason describing what's going on in the light, which in itself is
what
incredible.
happened to Orville?
Well, Orville describes, so you can see where they're going with this documentary though, because what he describes there is similar to what people describe in the near-death experience. Look, I think it's a long bow to draw. I don't think that's what's going on here, but I can see why they've tried to put that forward. And again, I'll link to the full thing so you can watch it and make up your own mind.
The most interesting part of what you've showed is this part, the light in the trees, the story from these guys. It's something tangible.
Play Orville's experience.
All right. This is 24?
Yes, beings grabbed.
I remember saying I could see fluorescent spaghetti all over the ground.
What?
I remember seeing if I look straight up, it's pitch black night, but it's the clearest night you see every star. If you look down, it's daytime. Okay? And there's people standing, they look human to me, and they were standing there, and kind of in a collective voice you could hear,
he said they looked human to me, right, when you did that edit there.
you can't be here. Then, a little bit later, and time is kind of irrelevant, So, then a little bit later, I heard a single voice say, "Mark him." And I felt something grab my wrist, and I felt the ting on the back of my left hand, right? And I pulled away, and as soon as I did, that's when I was out in the woods.
Both abductees were dropped off on the other side of the event site.
Tagged and bagged. Get him out of here.
So you've got her Melinda at another location saying that she feels like she's a lab rat or she's being controlled or being, trained or something. And now this guy is being told you need to be tagged and then dropped back. It continues though, right? Because then there's trail cam footage. So there's a trail cam of him coming back disoriented an hour later.
I'm still trying to get I recognize things, but I can't think and comprehend clearly.
Yeah.
And
he's out of it.
I couldn't even hardly speak.
Look at the way he's walking. So that just shows, how he's walking and that there's something off. But then, of course, we go back to, what happened to Jason. Listen to what Jason describes when he comes back.
When I come out on the ground, it was like I knew where I was at. And I kept calling for Orville. I could not find Orville anywhere. Couldn't see him, couldn't hear him. And I was trying to walk back to where the light was. And it was like I kept running into this force field that I couldn't get through. And it was like I would get turned around and come back to where I'd started.
So there's a force field?
Gold, Aaron.
That won't let him get anywhere near it?
I can tell why 'cause at the start of the day when you had discovered this, you were just laughing your ass off. But then as the day went on, you got more interested in it.
Yeah, it's like...
And it's the same. Like, I was making fun of it, but I like the report from these guys. It's
there's a certain genuineness to these people. There's something here that...
Not that other woman, but these guys.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to completely jump on the complete skepticism path. Look, this could be orchestrated in some way, but they appear to be very genuine. And it does fit with other stories that we've heard, especially when we go back to the orbs. So these orbs, which of course Josh, their son, Orville's son mentioned, Orville and Cheryl's son mentioned, they come up. So you've got Josh, who's back on the trail. He's caught on the trail cam. Watch Josh coming back.
You can see Jason coming down the hill, right?
Okay.
Jason, I'm
Watch
sorry.
up in the sky.
Yeah.
It looks like a plane blinking, but it's not. There's trees in the way. Because it quits blinking. It's like an orb or something followed him down the hill to make sure he was going to make it.
There's that cat again.
It was like after the second or third time I tried to walk like I wanted to walk, it was like I felt this being beside me. And I turned around to my left, and it was like the outline or a figure of what I'm going to say is Bigfoot, Sasquatch. And it was like it was sticking its hand out and motioning for me to go toward the road.
Yeah.
It never touched me that I know of, but it was like it was forcing me to go a certain direction, like it was hurting me. I remember the features on its face it was like a slick, worn, weathered, dirty leather. And its eyes were this real brilliant red color. And I wasn't scared. I wasn't worried about anything. It was just like, this is where you need to go. I'm helping you kind of deal.
What a benevolent Sasquatch. Just abducted him and tagged him.
And then
herding him back to the road.
And then throws you both, in the complete opposite direction of where you left, and then also, guides you back. It's just very strange. Like, it really is the height of strangeness.
But I don't know what happened to these guys, because they're saying that they were surrounded by humans. The first guy said it was humans.
Yeah, we got Jason here describing being escorted back by a Sasquatch type creature.
What's going on?
I don't know. And it's funny because it comes back to what we've just been doing the last couple of episodes, talking about people being, played by these entities. Because as Alan goes to leave, Alan and Ron are wrapping up the filming of this. The very last night as they go to leave, they kind of get mocked by this one final levitating rock.
Then, as we packed up our equipment and walked from the fire pit heading to our vehicle, then something extraordinary happened.
Now, they're insistent that this was a bunch of rocks that were dropped right next to them as they were driving out. As like one final mocking goodbye as they moved away. So look, I don't know. Take it or leave it. I'll link to it in the show notes so you can go and check out the full documentary.
What a banger.
I think it's amazing. And I put all that stuff right at the end as well, so that, oh, man, this is, I don't know what's going on. If you're only watching for 20 minutes, you totally miss out.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas if you've been listening for years, you know what's coming.
People turning off after 20 minutes.
That's right. It serves you right.
As soon as that weird Indian guy starts pointing out the curly tree, it's like, nope. But that's what's funny about this is, what's the connection between these people?
I have no idea.
The thing that stands out to me is they're all involved in the occult.
Yes.
And this is very clear because you can see like one of them's a modern day shaman.
Mm-hmm.
The other guys are doing these worldwide meditations out in the woods. They have a bloody crystal farm. Like it's all very, I don't know. It's like stopping short of having their Ouija board sessions in the forest at night. Like they're obviously very much giving the activity what it wants, which is its focus, their undevoted attention.
Yeah, if you ever needed a great example of that, of interacting with it, I don't know whether they were pulled into it, like clearly for Melinda Greer when she's describing her near-death experience, maybe that was the initiatory experience for her, which caused a lifetime of experiences, or she's had one experience and now she just happens to tack on to other people's experiences. I don't know. But for these guys, do they move into this property and there was already something strange going on, and of course it attracted their attention, and now they're in, like they've been pulled in? Or is it that because they were already involved in like worldwide meditations, that kind of stuff, they just happened to go to a location which would amplify that experience?
Maybe this is one of the supply points for the crystals that Trump is going to use to seal all his enemies in 2025
through a Musk rocket.
That's what I've heard, is that all his enemies are going to be sealed in crystals. So they need a large crystal supply.
Maybe.
So this could be one of the locations. So the Black Ops, like the Black Ops GOP is trying to secure crystal mines all over the United States. This could be one of them. I highly recommend you book a ticket to go see Board Camp Crystal Mine. You can find them at boardcampcrystalmine.com/crystal2.
Of course, I'll link to it in the show notes at mysteriousuniverse.org, so you can go and check it out.
Good stuff.
Yeah, it is good
find.
Stuff. Yeah.
Oh, you had me for a while there. I thought that was going to be crazy. But in the end...
very logical.
You really pulled it through.
That's right.
Coming up in our Plus extension, we're going to be talking about time expansion from Steve Taylor, the psychology of time perception, the illusion of linear time, which is going to show the science behind why time isn't a standard thing. It comes down to consciousness. Time depends on consciousness. We're going to look at some of the time expansion experiences of people all over the world. A lot of it comes from Austrians in the 1800s.
Really?
Who were apparently really good at falling off mountains. A lot of the reports come from Austrian guys slipping off some peak and then discovering that they're like, oh, I'm falling.
Time distortion.
I am falling to my death. Oh, should I take my glasses off? Maybe I should change before I hit the ground. What should I tell my loved ones when I die? So lots of bizarre experiences and some of the science behind it as well. That's coming up in Plus. If you want to get access, head to mysteriousuniverse.org/plus. Sign up today. Help support your favorite show. You get access to the big extensions we do every single Friday. And of course, Plus members get an exclusive show every single Tuesday as well. You're getting more than double the content if you sign up for Plus. Plus members also get a higher quality MP3 version of the show, totally ad-free version of the show as well. And if you sign up for MU Max, you get access to our massive back catalogue going back many, many years. It's all at mysteriousuniverse.org/plus. Sign up today. That's a wrap for this free edition of MU. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. If you're on Plus, stick around for all the good stuff after the break. For everyone else, we'll catch you next week.